Hello, welcome to this week's Connect Group. I am Cal Myers. I work for DC Church, and I'm here with Mike and Bobby, and we are here to do this week's Connect Group lesson with you all. So we just completed Proverbs last week, Proverbs 31. Our last two lessons out of the book here are out of Song of Songs, okay? Now, Song of Songs is a book in the Bible that I would say is very unique, right, guys?
Yeah.
Because we are talking about sex. We are talking about the love between a man and a woman in marriage. And, that's not something you hear often talked about in church very directly and aggressively. And really, that's not good, because whether you want to admit it or not, it's a common part of life. If you turn on the TV, you're lucky to find a show that is not rife with it. And we know all the issues that can come along when sex happens the wrong ways, the wrong places, and how it can hurt people. So we should be talking about it. And so today, our lesson is called Relational Foundations. And what that means is, what is a relationship? What is it? Where does it come from? Where's the beginning? What does it mean? And so we want to look at, what does it mean to have a good, healthy relationship between a man and a woman, okay? So we are in Song of Songs. And so the main idea today is that God created humans to be relational. And the greatest relationship that humans can have is between our God and his people. That's a weird point to get to when I say we're talking about married sex, okay? How does that relate to God? And so the real answer here is that we as Christians believe that God made a world that helps us to know him, right? And so human sexuality helps us to know God, his plans for us, how we ought to act towards God. And so really the intimacy that happens in a marriage that a man has with a woman has with a man, is meant to show us, to illustrate to us who God is, how much he loves us, and how we ought to love him and be intimate and close to him. And so really, a good marriage is rooted in intimacy, the devotion, the giving of one to the other. So with that being said, we're going to learn about sex today in marriage and about how we ought to relate to God. So Mike, I got a question for you to start off.
Okay.
How would you describe to a child God's purpose in making people? And what would you point to when explaining to a child how humans are unlike animals?
Good question. So I would say, if you're talking to a child, trying to keep it simple, God made us to know him and to be known by him. He made us to love him and to be loved by him. He made us basically to be in a relationship with him, which includes worshiping him and being obedient to him. And so that would be kind of about the most simple explanation I could think of. And in terms of how we're different from animals, there could be a lot of debate as to whether or not animals have souls and this kind of thing. But if you really get it down to the nuts and bolts of things, we know the difference between good and evil. We ate of the forbidden fruit. We know what evil is. I love my dog. She's as sweet as she can be. But if my dog got out and got a hold of a bird, she would kill it because she doesn't know any better, right? So, that would probably be the underlying thing that separates us from the animals, is we know what evil is, and we also understand the difference between good and evil.
All right, so we can morally reason through life where like animals cannot. And so just in the Proverbs, gluttonous behavior, drunkenness, living an uncontrolled life, that can happen with human sexuality. And so really the only meaningful way that a Christian can talk about how the world ought to be, how a person ought to live, is to explain that you were especially made by God with a purpose and a plan for you, and that includes your sexuality. And so that's a little too far for a child, probably, but you are mapping out the basics. Everyone has an origin story. Captain America has an origin story. Spider-Man does, and so do we. Okay, we're made by God with a purpose and a plan. So, let's get into our scripture now.
Song of Songs, 2:15. Catch the foxes for us, the little foxes that ruin the vineyards, for our vineyards are in bloom.
Crafty like a fox, eating grapes, okay? So this is a poem about love, okay? And there's a warning here. Catch the foxes. Catch the foxes. Be on guard, okay? Whether it's the community around the couple, or it's the couple here, the man and the woman, catch the animals because the foxes are coming into the vineyard, right? And so, vineyards are actually really cool because grapevines can like live for over 100 years. They can live longer than I'm going to live most likely. And they can produce grapes for decades and for decades, right? But they take a long time to grow and get mature. And on top of that, when grapes flower, they flower in the spring, but they don't fruit until late August usually and even later. So there's a long time for that fruit to grow. So a lot of time for a pest or like a pesky animal to get in there and destroy the grapes, right? But if the vineyard is maintained, if you watch out for the foxes, well, it can be this great, long-standing, productive grapevine, okay? And so a healthy marriage is like tending a garden, like pruning and caring for plants, watching out for pests and predators. And an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Taking it old school right there, right? So taking care of problems before they damage your grapevines is way easier than waiting until after your vines are damaged and then trying to figure things out. You've probably lost some of your harvest there, maybe lost your vines. So a Christian couple should make guarding their marriage a high priority. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So I got a question for you, Bobby. What kinds of things might be considered little foxes that can harm a marriage? And what are some ways you can catch them?
Well, they're just from my experience, anything to distract you, sometimes even with your career, having that right balance, and sometimes it's not even a balance. Navy career, you're out underway all the time. But
you were in the Navy, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
So you can remember to write, write frequently, write, in a way that's going to be inspiring or anything like that. And there are just some things, we hadn't been around family. We would just hear, but when you're around family, a lot of time taking counsel from people that don't even mean your relationship any good. People, right. Even people that are loving, people seeking counsel, I would seek counsel from someone that has a healthy relationship, a Christian relationship. There are a lot of foxes that come with that. What you have come in the gates of your soul, in your eyes, your ears, and there's some things that you come across in life that you don't have any choice of seeing, but sometimes you put yourself in a position where you shouldn't, and then that can be a fox that can really get in and cause damage to the vine, which is your relationship. So you just given enough time to mature. I know men of old in the Old Testament, a lot of times they were 2 years before they even went to war to be able to have enough time to really let their relationship cure, kind of like wine.
Yeah.
Before they even went to war. So they had 2 years of curing that relationship or that vine. So it would be solid enough, because in the infancy of your relationship, a lot of times that is the most vulnerable your relationship. Not that it can't be, but a new relationship is very vulnerable.
Well said. So, the company you keep, who you're around, so if you're in a room and people start talking about their wives in a negative way or their husbands in a negative way, that's a good indication those aren't good folks for you to be hanging around, especially when it means, when it's that kind of discussion. So I would walk away or get out of that pretty quick, right? Whether it's online or you're in a room with them. This idea of the ancient Hebrews, a young man gets married, they would draft men into the military, and when they get married, they couldn't be drafted for 2 years because the idea was, produce an heir, work on your marriage, grow in love and intimacy with your new wife. So, knowing what you want your marriage to be, knowing how you want it to be, knowing that is different than achieving that. So make a roadmap. Know what your weak points are. Know, what the issues can be, and then act on it. Right? How many people with COVID-19 were like, I'm going to learn how to bake bread, and I'm going to read all these books that I'm behind on, I'm going to tend my garden, and I'm going to do all these amazing things. And then you go to their house Well, you wouldn't go in their house, right? You might drive by their house and you see, well, their yard really isn't looking that good. And they haven't really been reading books. And I'm not criticizing you saying this, but what I'm trying to get to here is, you know, we all talk a big game, right? But we don't do it. So if you know what your marriage needs, if you see, hey, a predator can get in my garden and mess up stuff, then put the fence back up. You know, be proactive and fix the problems that you have.
One of the great analogies in that is the fox doesn't care about how much destruction it does to the grapevines. Right?
That's right.
And that's just like your marriage. That person who wants to get into your marriage and mess things up, they don't care about the destruction that comes from that.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
It's just chaos.
They just
right?
want what they want.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And they'll use it, abuse it, and lose it. You
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
So, now, Mike, will you read our next scripture for us?
This is Song of Songs, chapter 2, 16 through 17, which says, "My love is mine, and I am his. He feeds among the lilies until the day breaks and the shadows flee. Turn around, my love, and be like a gazelle or a young stag on the divided mountains."
The woman here is probably a woman who was not very wealthy, and she worked outside as like a laborer, and so she wouldn't have been looked at as like a noble woman that would immediately be the one that a rich man would want to marry. But here, Solomon, he does love her, and she loves him, and she speaks here kind of in like a dream, like a wistful way. I long for the day where my lover is mine and I am his, and he, like a gazelle, can come into the meadow amongst the flowers and the lilies, and he can eat to his heart's content. And so there's obviously erotic imagery in this, right? And you can see that. And so there's a time and a place for that. And when it is like that, it's a good thing. It's a great thing. And so a lot of times for animals, there are times a year where there's just not much to eat, and they make do, and they eat stuff they wouldn't eat when the weather's warmer and better. But when the weather is really good, they gorge themselves and they eat as much as they want. And so the idea is that when two lovers are together and they're married, then let them be close, intimate, and enjoy each other to the contents of their hearts. But at the time, this is not happening. The woman here, she speaks that right now it's still nighttime. It's still a time of worry. We're not married. We're not together. We're not united. There may be others who don't want us to get married. There may be problems we have to get through. So she says to her lover, "Until the day breaks and the shadows flee, turn, my love, and be like a gazelle or a stag, and climb up and down the mountains and traverse all the problems and worries that you could ever have to encounter." I was in Utah once on vacation. I was in one of our great national parks. So go have some fun sometime, but big craggy peaks, big steep mountains. You're looking over the edge, and my wife is getting nauseous. And Cal, stop it. That's dangerous. Anyway, I'm looking up, and there's goats all up on the mountain, and it's like a sheer rock face, and they're just jumping up the face of the rock, and they're looking at it like it's the most boring Monday in the history of the world, so mundane. And I'm thinking, that is amazing. How can any animal do that, right? And so that's her lover here, like a young stag traversing the mountains. All that could be a problem, but they're not held back. They can do it. So, Mike, how are mutual trust and submission related in a marriage? And can you have one without the other?
Okay. Submission is one of those words that's really kind of gotten a bad rap over the years. When we think about submission, we get images of like the bad guy torturing the good guy to get the secret plans to the fort, In reality, submission is simply just voluntary cooperation, reaching a point in a relationship where you voluntarily cooperate with the person you're in a relationship with, right? You can't reach that point in a relationship without trust. Trust has to be there in order for you to reach the point where you're willing to submit to whatever the situation is. And
there's coercion if you don't do that,
right? Yeah,
versus submission.
Exactly, which is back to the guy getting tortured for the secret plans.
Gotcha.
See how that goes full circle. But no, and then on the other side of the coin, right? You won't trust someone that you're not willing to submit to. So you got to have both. They are connected. You can't have one without the other. I think there's a very clear connection there between the two words.
Yeah, so mutual trust leads to intimacy, and the parties, they choose to submit and give their life to each other.
Right.
Excellent. Very good. All right, so now I got a question for you, Bobby. So it's good to have trust. We want to have submission, but what can married couples, what can they do to build trust? I gave you the easy question, Bobby.
Yeah, it's weighty. Well, over a period of time, a lot of times not put yourself in hopefully positions that there are some things through omission. Listening to my wife, I know for myself, and my wife was like, you might want to look out for that situation right there. I tend to take pretty much everybody as a person that means well to me.
Mm-hmm.
And my wife has guided me through some situations that, as a woman, she could see things that I don't see.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just operating obliviously, and she says I might watch out for that situation, and instead of being argumentative with her, then just really, really follow that, because she wouldn't be saying that for no reason. And a lot of times it doesn't even have to be another female. It could be my work. It could be how I'm parenting or anything like that. So the thing is that in building that trust, that also it seems like a small thing. Am I at where I say I'm going?
Mm-hmm.
Do I come home and on time, or even now I had a cell phone. Do I call and say I'm held up in traffic? I've seen the small thing like I had to work later, and she knows I'm in the military, and you should understand that. Well, I had to come to the point of I have to work late. And I'm sorry about that. So the thing, it was something just as seemed like it would have been very small, but it was very big, and it was very big for our relationship. And then the other thing for us in a relationship, that if she needs some space, she needs me to hold her. She needs me sometimes to just be quiet. She didn't ask me to fix it. We as men, I don't know about maybe y'all.
No,
you come in and you want to.
This is true. For me, it is.
You kind of want to bring your proverbial tool bag in and fix things. And sometimes just being in prayer with her, and we trust in God that He's going to fix it, it's probably been 80%. Because for me, I want to, I feel like even now, or where I'm at in our relationship, I want to be able to fix it. I want for me to be able to make her feel better. But the thing is that she knows that both of us, we have to trust God. So what we have, we can trust each other. So a lot of it comes through me listening to God, for her to give. I get the benefit of her trust and trusting God, knowing that He's going to do the right thing. So it's actually, I get the benefit of just not putting my hands into a situation that's not really mine.
So a lot of cool stuff here. So in your marriage, there's three people. There's you, your wife, and God. So he's always ever present in like what's going on. But additionally, it can be easy to look at marriage as like a means to an end. Like my wife does particular chores in the house that if I was living alone, I would have to do all of it, right? And I do other chores. Or, I like the benefits I have from being with my wife, marital intimacy. And so that's nice to have, where I wouldn't normally have that, right? I like to have someone to speak to. But she can become like a roommate or like a friend, but she's not a lover, or she's not a wife. And so, trust, number one, you trust in God. But number two, with your wife, you build trust through talking through a life like she's a real person, like she matters. If she's good at looking at people and figuring out what they're about, and she helps you to understand that, listening to her, and you're valuing her, you're respecting her, you're building her up. And when you do things like include her in your life, where you are, what time it is, where you're going, when you show up where where you're supposed to be, when you claim you're going to be there, right? You're being a person that you can trust. And so trust builds intimacy. And then when you do have friction in your marriage, you two submit to each other because you have built up trust and intimacy. So that's great.
Cal, too, for me, I'm good at being in a yoke and earning money. My wife is better at dispensing money. Like she's more short term, I'm long term. I'm the dreamer. I'm like so the thing is that being away and knowing your bills are being paid. I mean, my credit rating is because of
Your wife.
her
Gotcha.
practice of, paying the bills on time. And you even find in the New Testament, beside infidelity, what's second to marriage breaking up?
Money.
Money.
Yeah.
So the thing is that, and her having a voice in money concerns, because
Mm-hmm.
when we first started out, we're gonna get this, we're gonna get this, we're gonna get this.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to mature into we
Yeah.
instead of, I had to take that I. That trust came when I started using we and us and our.
Good.
Yeah.
And when I'm talking to a lot of younger guys, I was like, these are some of the words that maybe you need to drop when it comes to your wife.
Mm-hmm.
Is my money.
Right.
Yeah. I think that's some good. If you're younger here, or newlywed, or only a few years in, it took me like 7 or 8 years to get some bad habits figured out. So, but this is good stuff for some older married men here. Okay, so now, Bobby, will you read our next scripture for us? It's not just one verse this time. It's a lot more.
Take a breath, Bobby. It's going to be okay.
In my bed at night, I sought the one I love. I sought him, but did not find him. I will arise now and go about the city, through the streets and the plazas. I will seek the one I love. I sought him, but did not find him. The guards who go about the city found me. I asked him, have you seen the one I love? I had just passed them when I found the one I love. I held on to him and would not let him go until I brought him to my mother's house, to the chamber of the one who conceived me. Young women of Jerusalem, I charge you by the gazelles and the wild doves of the field, do not stir up or awaken love until the appropriate time.
The woman here, right? She's in her bed at night, okay, and so she is, she's, kind of having like a dream, right? So she's having like a dream of like her desire is brought to bear. So she is going to marry this man, and she's dreaming about, I miss this man, I love him, I want to find him, but I did not find him. So it's heavily hinted it's a dream by how the scripture is written, but also a woman wouldn't have walked out at night alone around the city, right? Past other men and stuff. So, but it's meant to display how urgent and desirous she is to be with the one that she loves, right? And so she even speaks to the guards in the city about, have you seen the one I love, my lover? But then I discovered him, and when I had him, I held on to him, and I would not let him go until I brought him where? To my mother's house, to the chamber of the one who gave me life, who conceived me. So this is kind of a weird thing. Why would she take her lover back to her mom's house, to the bed that her mom conceived her in, to obviously have relations with the man she loves, her lover? This is her desire. What this is meant to display is, I want to get married to my husband, and I want us to have sex. I want us to be close. I want us to have marital closeness, intimacy, and that's what's going on here. My mother walked this path. She got married to my dad, and then they had a kid, and I was that kid, and now I go back in her lineage, in her line, back to her house to get married and consummate the marriage like that. So that's what's going on here. So this is an explicitly erotic passage. It's the basic idea is, if you love someone and you want to be with them, you want to be married to them, you should want to have sex with them. You should want to be in an erotic, intimate relationship with them. That is healthy and normative. And so this is all held in tension with the balance of a warning to all the women who are younger, i.e. not married, of Jerusalem. I charge you, young women, according to the gazelles and the does, so the men, running around, struggling through life. You do not stir up or awaken love until the appropriate time. You do not stir it up. But when it is stirred up, let love be cooking, That's the idea. When it's time for love, when it's time for marriage, intimacy, and human sexuality to be rightly expressed how God means it to, let it flourish and let it cook.
Cal, too, is that, it's a familial love that the mom has, but there's a don't stir up the arrows love.
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot of times you're looking for that, she's longing for that God type of love,
Mm-hmm.
right? But when you stir up at arrows, you might not bring home to mom. You know,
Sure.
a lot of relationships don't make it to mom after you've already, had done something
Sure.
that whatever. So
Put things out of order.
but it has
Yeah.
some order in how to do that. So the thing is, they really looking close. The thing is, the arrows street is not the way to go. Go back to, it's almost like us going back to our first love. Our love before we met our wives and everything like it, if we were Christians, would have been God. And the thing is, it still is. But the thing is, here on earth, the thing about it is, he's taken that love, and now we give the reflection of the love he gives us to our wives, even though we still have eros in us. Because eros is selfish. It's me, my, back to those words I was talking about before.
Yeah, so the husband or wife is never an object or a tool, right? That's never what it's meant to be. In a lot of ways, how would that be unlike pornography or other kinds of lust? It's just a means to an end where you get what you want without regard for others. So you objectify them. So Mike, I have a question for you.
Okay.
How does a person rationalize sexual infidelity, and what do the efforts to make it right reveal about the person and about our world in general?
So I can give you 3 popular kind of justifications for that behavior, and we probably have heard these many, many, many times. I'm a man, and a man's got urges, right? It's just sex. It didn't really mean anything. And another one would be, I wasn't getting what I needed at home. So those are kind of some thought processes that people who are trying to justify that behavior will commonly return to when they want to make a case. And really what it says about us as a society is we have some pretty unhealthy and unrealistic views about sex, right? Sex has a purpose. It was designed for a purpose. And when we take a cavalier attitude towards sex and just say, well, it's just sex, or, I'm just a person who, I just got urges I need to fill, it's a very careless approach to sex. And we talked about a couple weeks ago where that can lead and the dangers that come with that. And it all comes back to us being sinners, and as sinners, we want to justify our behavior.
And I'm happy you got this question, because we talked about how you talk to a child about how humans are, what makes us unlike animals, unique from animals. And so this is kind of where we get to this idea. Like, if we are just animals, then we would act like animals, right? And so that's normally fine for us until we have to ask hard questions, because we're okay being animals when it comes to our sexuality, but we're not okay when it comes to animals when it comes to how we treat others, violence, and whatever else. Because if we really are more like animals than humans as far as moral reasoning, then we need to look to people who, to be frank, you would be very uncomfortable with. People like, well, I'll just go ahead and say it, like the SS. Like war crimes and like World War II stuff, because that's very brutish, animalistic behavior. You can look at a person on the street who says, I want that money, and rob someone, and they murder them right there for $20. That's animalistic. And so we condemn that, but then we go, well, I have needs, So you can't get only part of it. You got to get the whole thing if you're going to go that direction. So I think you did a good job explaining that. So Bobby, I have a question for you. What are the dangers of an undisciplined life as it concerns sexual behavior and desires?
I believe this one. Well, it's, at least for me, it's a two-sided coin, and both of them could be wrong. They are wrong. Outside is pretty. Outside of your relationship, your marriage relationship is pretty cut and dried. It's wrong. Inside your relationship, at the beginning we were talking about the title of this lesson, relational foundations. Is the initial bricks that you're laying have to do with the heart. The 3-letter word we were talking about is basically, when it comes to full, it's ripe. So the thing is in my relationship with my wife, if I don't listen to her, all the things that are leading to ripe are the things that build intimacy with her. So as guys, and my wife was sitting here, is that the intimacy with her happens more before the right than it does for us. So the thing is making sure you don't go straight to ripe without the
Yeah,
bricks
I
that build
got
a
you.
relationship. So I think that the thing is for us is that maybe listening more, maybe being more complimentary, more communicative. There are a lot of steps to intimacy and hugging, listening. You know, for me, I like grilling. There's a whole lot of things
Yeah,
that build
yeah.
that relationship, build those building blocks that build to that area, and that don't never really get talked about until you trip over one and say, "You didn't talk to me all day."
Yeah, so
You know,
and this is a great example about where media, TV, movies, pornography distort people's life because they reduce down sex to like a mechanistic activity.
Yes.
Well, we're here, we're in an easy place to have sex, so we're just going to have sex,
Right.
and that works. And so and what happens is that people are complicated. They have complex emotions. They have issues they have to work through just in their own lives. Not even to mention relational issues, intimacy. So it's like now I'm important to you. Now you're listening when you want to have sex,
Yes.
etc. So what that tells you about you is you're actually only listening to the individual because you want to have sex with them.
Right.
So you're really objectifying them
Yes.
by listening and pretending to be intimate. So, a little bit of married wisdom here. If you want to have more sex in your marriage, it may be wise to explicitly and actively do things that do not pertain to or even resemble having sex.
The
It's this
foundation-
weird
yeah.
inverse
Yeah,
relationship.
it's the foundations, like Jesus being our cornerstone. It's just building from the right place. You start the first brick crooked, the whole wall is going to continue to
right,
be
that's
crooked.
right.
Yeah.
So laying every brick perfectly, but with God's guidance, is sometimes it might be just a hug. I've had times where we just hugged up and we listened to some music or went to a movie or anything like that. That was intimacy for that period of time. So the thing is being able to be, I think, versatile is the word for me. What I've seen with my wife is, before I came over, I'm going to eat lunch with my girlfriend. Go ahead. I hope you enjoy yourself. 30 years ago, how long y'all gonna be gone? Where are you going?
Yeah.
Boom, boom, boom. Those are little foxes that you would never even. How long you gonna be gone? This woman's grown.
Yeah.
She's married to me. So how I show her I trust her is say, enjoy yourself.
If you give her like interrogation when she
Right.
leaves the house. Yeah.
What I love about the image that you talk about building on, though, is intimacy really is like that, right? It comes in stages. You build off of what you previously did in the relationship to get to a deeper level of intimacy. And so that term of building it is really important for young couples to understand in their marriage.
And older too. When you're young,
yeah.
young, for me being 60 years old, right? That you go through phases of your life, coming up on 40 years. When you're young, you might be more eros. You look back and you look and you're like, man, was I really? And every area
Sure.
of your life, for me and my wife, we were more communicative and enjoy each other's company and everything like that. So when I have that conversation with someone even 10 years younger, that's boring.
Yeah.
And then you've seen people that have gotten they rode the Eros train and then they make it to 10 years.
Yeah. It's so just to remind, the main idea today is that God created humans to be relational.
Yes.
And the greatest relationship we have is between us and Him, right? With our Creator. And so whether we're reading through Proverbs and talking about how to have a good life, how to make money, how to stay on the right way, how to be a person of acclaim, all of that begins with knowing God and knowing Him truly. And that happens through believing in Jesus Christ as your Savior and Lord. That's how God has given us a way to know Him. And so that's where Christian life begins. And so whether it's wanting to have a healthier marriage, more intimacy, more trust, which also helps us know God, we get the benefits of what God has made. Having a good marriage, having, a good place to express our sexuality. And so there's a lot of happiness that comes out of this, right? But if you do the wrong stuff, there's a proportional amount of dread and pain that comes along with it. And so that's kind of a happy warning, I guess. But we are going to go ahead and complete our lesson today. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next week.